All right, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us to today's webinar. My name is Andrew Francis, and I am the Director of Evaluation Services here at Foundations, Inc. And we'd like to welcome you to our Beyond the Conference webinar series. Today, we have Shawn Petty, Principal Research Associate at Westat, and our Perspectives from the Field show host, quite a mouthful. We also have some special guests with us as well. And so before we get started, I'd like to just give you a little background information about Foundations. So Foundations, Inc., we are a national education not-for-profit located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. And our mission is to improve the quality of education by building the skills of educators. If you're interested in learning more about Foundations, then we'd like for you to head over to our website, which I'm going to put right here in the chat, so you are able to learn some more about what we do and how we continue to support the system with various programs and services. And you can also follow us on social media as well, and I'll also drop that in the chat for you. So you can find us on X, you can find us on Instagram, you can find us on Facebook, wherever it may be. Now, let me also just let you know that we are the host of or what we call our signature professional learning experience, the Beyond School Hours Conference, that's held each year in February. And this year, in fact, let me say next year, that's 2025, we will be in Orlando, Florida from February 13th to 16th. And we would love to have you as our guest. So registration is open. I dropped in the chat for you hold on, let me just make sure the link to the Beyond School Hours Conference website, so you can go there and begin the process of getting registered to be a part of that exciting conference. Shawn, Michelle, Travis were at the conference this year, and they'll tell you it was a wonderful experience, and it only promises to get bigger and better next year. So just so you know, this webinar will also be archived, recorded and archived on our website and available on YouTube. So you'll be able to access it at a later date, and you can share it with your friends and family or colleagues who need to also hear all the exciting stuff that our guests have to share with you. Let me now turn you over to our show host, Shawn Petty. Over to you, Shawn.
Hey, thank you, Andrew. It is great to see everybody. I see Yvonne there on camera from Philly. How you doing, Yvonne? Nice to see you. And of course, our good friend from Kid Grit, Julia. Nice to see you, Julia. A fun fact about Julia, we have known each other since like 2007 or something crazy like that. So it's been like forever. So glad to have you on the show today. Of course, we have a lot of other great folks. I see a lot of folks. I see Tanda from Texas and a lot of folks some folks from California in the participants. So appreciate you joining. We're so excited to do today's show. I do have to give a shout out to the Charles S. Mott Foundation. Charles S. Mott Foundation has done so much for after school, but they do sponsor the Perspective show. They make sure that we have 3 or 4 shows throughout the year, and then they sponsor us at the Beyond School Hours Conference, where we do a live show. So we're very excited for their support and thank them. Let me tell you a little bit about the format of the show. This is a total organic show. And what do I mean by that? Nothing is planned. Nothing is there are no canned answers. We have no laugh tracks to play. No funny dad jokes or anything like that to share with you. This is literally live. And everything that we're going to do is off the cuff. We will keep to the hour, so we will wrap up, even though we usually get going and we usually have more than we can cover. But by about 1:55 Eastern time, we will go ahead. Andrew will kind of use the old shepherd's hook and will give me the cue to wrap it up so that everybody can go about and enjoy their day. But we have 2 really amazing guests on the show today. They are leaders in the field of education, particularly in experiential education, in hands-on learning, in things that really align with the work that we do in the informal learning space, in the after-school learning space, as well as the education space that doesn't quite fit in a box. And that's the great thing about Travis and Michelle. There is nothing that they do that fits into a box. They not only do they think well inside the box about how we can make the box better, but they think about things that are way outside the box. So we are so excited to have them today. And I'm going to go ahead and ask them to do also a sound check with them, but also to ask them to say hi and let us know where they're coming to us from. So Travis and Michelle, welcome to the show. And where are you at today?
Sean, I appreciate being here. It's always great being with you and also the foundation team. So Travis here. I'm actually calling in from Utah. I've been here for about 4 years probably at this point. Before here, I was living out in California for a couple of years. So glad to be here.
Excited to have you. Thank you. All the way from Utah today. So, Michelle, where are you coming from? Are you in Utah?
I am not in Utah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Ament, and I am coming from Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I have lived in Minnesota for a good 30 years. You can even hear the Minnesota accent a little bit, right? So I'm excited to be here. I love living in the Midwest, and anyway, I'm thrilled to be part of the talk show today. Thanks, Shawn.
No, thanks for joining us. And for everybody, because this is an organic talk show, we're going to ask you, while we love to do kind of like an open mic concept where everybody could jump in, we have found that the best option is actually to throw some questions in the chat. I'm really good at switch tasking, or at least doesn't everybody say that thinks they're good at something, right? They're like, yeah, I'm really good at that. And then you find you're not. But I believe that I'm really good at switch tasking. So if you can throw your questions in the chat, I will work them into the conversation regardless of what the question is. As long as it's clean, I'll work it in and make sure that we kind of circle back to it. And if we run out of time, we're not able to circle back, Travis, Michelle, and I chat quite a bit, and we're part of a movement, which we're going to talk about, called the Human Intelligence Movement, that Michelle's kind of heading up. So we kind of have some meetings around that too. So I'll bring those questions up to them and get back to everybody. But right now, I want to start off by just simply asking, why you're on the show. Like, what is your big thing in education? What is ProSolve? And what do you guys do for a living? We can start with Travis, and then we can transition over to Michelle.
Yeah, I'll kind of kick it off with a little bit, but Michelle, I'd love for you to drive home the learning side of it as well. So ProSolve is a company that provides highly enriching, engaging curriculum, primarily for the after school and summer space. And so in our products and what we offer, you can actually see some of the product behind us. We believe that to play in after school and summer, you've got to be insanely engaging for students, speak their language, and really get them excited and want to be there, while also simultaneously making sure that you're achieving some sort of learning objective or learning outcome. And these two things are really hard to balance and approach in an after school or summer program. And so our product was built out of a passion for me. I'm the CEO and founder of ProSolve. I've been doing this for about 15 years, but we've been in the out of school space for the last 4 years or so. And our product is a very unique experience. Kids wake up in a post-apocalyptic world where all the adults have mysteriously vanished, allowing students to have to rise up and become problem solvers. So what it looks like is, imagine board games, escape rooms, and video games all merge into this fun game-like experience where students are having to make tough moral and ethical decisions, right? They have to decide, what kind of government are they going to be as a team in this experience? Are they going to become a dictatorship or democracy? If you want kids to learn the pains of a dictatorship, have them play a dictatorship. So in summary, Shawn, the whole philosophy, this is just one of our products that we provide, but the whole philosophy is ProSolve learning experience. We believe the best way is to stimulate real world problems or let kids solve actual real world problems. And if we do that, they're going to thrive. They're going to grow their social emotional skills. They're going to grow their critical thinking skills, and they're going to become competent adults that enter into a very unknown workforce with the rise of artificial intelligence.
So now you've been, and I know we need to jump over to Michelle too, but before we jump over to Michelle's background, because her story is going to build on yours, you say that you've been doing this for, 15 years. So did you start like when you were like 12 or something? I mean, what's the story there?
I appreciate that. Yeah, actually, My origin story, I think, is different from most entrepreneurs who enter the education space. I think often it's prior educators and administrators who see a problem and provide a solution. My origin comes from the perspective of being a student. I started this organization when I was 17 years old. And to tell you a little bit about my story, for me, I loved technology. I loved what it could do for my own learning. And so my senior year of high school in Georgia, where I went to high school, I decided to take notes on my smartphone at the time. And the policy in my school was no cell phones allowed. And so my teacher took up the device, gave it to my principal called my parents. I went home in trouble that day. And, I complained to my parents. My dad said, shut up and do something about it. If you don't like what you see in education, be the change that you desire. And I think that part of my journey and my story, that attitude was so critical, right? How often would parents say, well, you need to listen to your teacher, you need to comply? Whereas their response was, well, no, like you have the ability to create impact at any age, at any level, if you have the dedication, passion, and desire to do so. And so what I did was I spent 4 months building a YouTube video showing how one-to-one mobile learning could transform education. That video was picked up by Steve Jobs. It went viral around the world. And by complete accident.
The video was picked up by the Steve Jobs, like the guy who was co-founder of Apple and wore the turtlenecks and did the whole thing.
Yeah, I actually have a picture someone sent me. I wish I saved it, of the Apple Education Conference that they internally did, where Steve Jobs and John Couch, who ran education, played my video as basically saying, "Hey, this kid gets it. We should be sending this everywhere," because he basically makes the case for why every kid needs an iPod Touch, because that was the whole video was based on the iPod Touch at the time.
That's hilarious. Now you actually kind of showed us before we started the show. You actually have a little bit of a video and of yourself, of your story. I was wondering, and Michelle, don't worry, I have you in the background, like we're coming. But I was wondering if you'd be willing to at least show us the haircut. I think that's awesome.
I will gladly start to now date myself and share just the first 30 seconds of it so you can get a feel for what the original video was like. So let me see if this, oh, you know what? I always do that. Stop share. Got to share with audio and optimize for video. Let's try this again. Here we go. Desktop 2. Share. All right. I'll play just the first 30 seconds. It's a 5-minute video, which, is long for something like this. I'll just play the first 30 seconds or so.
My name is Travis Allen. I'm a 17-year-old high school student at Whitewater High in Fayetteville, Georgia. I believe I have a solution to America's education problem, and I need your help. My high school is experiencing massive budget cuts, teachers are being let go, and classroom sizes are getting larger. Our public education system is broken, and it needs to be changed. I hope you will take a moment to watch this short PowerPoint presentation I put together that answers the question, does technology belong in our classroom? You decide. Let me introduce you to the future of American education.
I'll go ahead and stop it there. It's funny going back and watching this video because I see history repeating itself. The whole video was about, we got to go one-to-one. If we just get every student a mobile device, a laptop, a Chromebook, whatever, we'll change education. We will prepare our students for the future. Fast forward to today, we did it. We achieved the dream of that video back in 2009 that I posted, and yet nothing has changed. What I tell people is my video got it wrong. It was all about the device. It wasn't about transforming the educational practice and system and curriculum and what we value as a society in the workforce. And so I see history repeating itself with AI. We'll probably talk about that in the future. But that's my story. That's how I got in here. I've been doing keynotes since that video went viral all over the world for the last 15 years, sharing my unique student perspective on my dream for what education could be.
I love it. I mean, you definitely were a bold 17-year-old because your first sentence was the education system is broken, you know. And how many times have we in the audience wanted to share something similar? Not that education is broken, but we feel sometimes that it feels broken because we can't get things done. Uh, but I love that, and so I love where you were going with that. Like you were focused on the device, you know, and that you've learned a lot, and that's going to play into our AI conversation. But you went out and you found a kindred soul who has a lot of experience with experiential education. I think that's where Michelle comes in, right? Like, Michelle, how did you, like, where did you kind of get started in this? And then how did you line up with Travis? And then how did you guys become the dynamic wonder twins that are there in the nation making a difference right now with education using not so much the tools, but more kind of the whole concept and idea of tech enhancing our lives and really experiential learning?
Well, thanks, Shawn. I have really only known Travis for about 2 years now, which is remarkable to think because, like you said, our philosophies are really aligned. And what I often joke about two things when I think about Travis, spoke about his experience was he had poor experience in school for he said that, and I always joke, I wish you were in my 5th grade class because you would have loved school, because when I was a teacher I loved doing hands-on experiential learning, and I think that it would have changed kind of how he perceived school. I always joke with him about that. But I have been a mother and a wife and an educator for over 30 years. And I think the thing that really has shaped me, Shawn, is watching kids in school, my own kids especially, struggle in different parts of their school day and their school year. And so it's really driven me to think differently about learning, and whether that's in the school day or in the out of school time space. I think oftentimes this factory model of education is not doing justice to what kids need. And so I can speak from the heart around my own 3 kids who are 18 and 20 and 23, and their struggles over the last 20 years in education. And that's really propelled me to want to go out and make change in our education system and bring forward a different way of learning. And I think about when I was a classroom teacher, how I was able to really understand students and understand their families and be able to be responsive to students' needs in the classroom. And I think I'm just compelled to bring that back into our education system, because I think we've lost that ability to really be responsive and create equitable experiences for learners that are personalized to who they are. And so I think my work at ProSolve as the Chief Academic Officer is really trying to reimagine what learning and assessment and teaching looks like. And so, as Travis explained, kind of what Quest is and all the parts around the problem solving in a simulated world, what I do is try to think about how do we bring that into the education system and make it really usable for teachers and impacting students.
So that's,
And Shawn, if I could actually just jump in real quick,
yeah.
I just wanted to throw a comment out there. It has been an incredible experience working with Michelle. Her and I are kindred spirits, and yet we come from 2 totally different worlds, which I think has made us work so well together. Earlier I mentioned in out of school time, for example, you have to be insanely engaging for kids, and you also have to achieve amazing learning outcomes to really be successful here. And often that is kind of the dynamic that Michelle and I often constantly aim for and obsess over, right? And when we design products together, we have those 2 perspectives. Often my perspective will come from a gamer. It'll come from a student. It'll come from the desire to play, the desire to experience something firsthand, right? And then she brings the edu speak. She brings the other side of it to blend both of those worlds together and find that happy medium. And, one thing I reflect and think about that on, I just think about how, man, I wish every education company out there had that similar dynamic, where there was someone championing the student voice while also championing the educational needs and desire. Because what I find, this is generalizing, but what I find is the way that we design product in education is students are an afterthought often. They are not the primary source because they're not the buyer. They're not the one you have to have buy the product at the end of the day. So often we build a product to the boxes that administrators have in compliance with them. And then we wonder why our kids are totally disengaged with the curriculum that we put forward with them. So I love that dynamic that Michelle and I have, the ability to come together from multiple perspectives and diverse thinking when it comes to dreaming up what's possible in education.
You make a really good point there. And Michelle, thank you for sharing your background too. And I'm going to put a pin in an idea about you designing the learning experience model and come back to that in just a second. Like we haven't quite brought that up, but I do want to explore that a little bit. But Travis, you made a comment which I think is really valuable, and that is a lot of times education companies, and I would propose that perhaps even education entities, agencies, those that oversee the scope and sequence of our education system, we do design not always with the student in mind. And I noticed that, with gaming elements, like and we have some other folks on the line. I've seen, I think Expanded Learning Academy is here in the audience. Definitely Kid Grit is in the house. And so I know you guys have experienced this too as founders of educational product service companies. Sometimes we leave things out, and with gaming devices, sometimes we forget things such as social emotional learning or character development or team development. We focus a lot on the product and the amazing experience, and we build in the academic outcomes. But you and Michelle did something different. You also started to look at how you can embed some of these other aspects. They're really not other, they really are all together, but sometimes we don't build products that way. Could you share a little bit more, you or Michelle, could you share a little bit more how you've embedded some important concepts like social emotional learning or character building, whatever your state calls it? In Texas, we tend to call it character building. But if your state calls it something else, how did you embed things like what Castle is bringing up and what we're focusing? Because you've done that, right?
Absolutely, I can speak to that. Shawn, when we think about social emotional curriculums or character education curriculums, oftentimes they are very focused on a story, or they ask kids to role play something. And, kids go through the motions. They do what you're supposed to do. I remember teaching a certain curriculum, and I would hold up a poster, read a story, and ask for kids to say, what would you do if you were Travis? How would you handle this if you were Shawn? And you know what? I could see these kids rolling their eyes at me. I mean, they were upper elementary kids, and they were just going along with it. The 30 minutes was up, and then we were on to the next thing. And one of the things that I noticed is that the lessons never stuck. I'd still have increased conflict on the playground. Students would still not be understanding who they are, their strengths and their limitations. They wouldn't feel good about being part of the classroom community because they couldn't build relationships with others. The list goes on and on. And so when we set out to build Quest, what we really look at is how do we put kids into authentic experiences where they actually can build true SEL or character education skills. And so students are in teams, and they are tackling problems that they really care about. And I think that right there is the first thing, is that we need to create experiences that are relevant and authentic to kids that they actually care about. So often in education, it's what we as adults care about or what we think kids need to know, instead of putting them in situations and experiences where it's something that is relevant to them and that they have a stake in the game for. And so Quest does that. They're in a team. They are propelled to solve the problem and figure out what happened. And there's an element of gamification and wanting to win and be the best team. So through that comes this community that they come up with a team name and they have a team chant. So you can see this community that's formed with these 5 or 6 students. And there's always struggles when you're working as a team. Sometimes they don't get along. Sometimes they have to work through disagreements. They have to negotiate. They have to build relationships with one another, listen to each other, take turns. And we've designed Quest to have a variety of experiences. So the strengths of different individuals come out. If you are a real analytical thinker, you can shine. If you're a strong communicator, you can shine. If you're really creative, you can shine. So it really accentuates different strengths. So I say all of that because to me is how you build authentic SEL skills, is by actually being in an experience where you have to practice and apply those skills in a way that's meaningful to you. And what I really see then is that students are able to transfer those skills to the playground, to the lunchroom, to the bus, to their daily lives. And when we think about human intelligence and these character education or SEL skills, and as we look ahead to our AI world, these are the skills that kids are going to need to have. We're going to, automate tasks so much. We see that happening that we're going to need to be working collaboratively and solving problems and being really adaptive in this future world. And I think Quest, in any, I'm talking about Quest a lot here, but any experiential, hands-on way that you're working collaboratively, solving problems and building these human intelligences in a really authentic way will transfer so much more than just listening to a story, maybe role playing, maybe hypothetically saying, if I were in this situation, this is what I would do. That learning isn't sticky. We've got to get kids experiencing learning so that they're doing and learning by doing. And I think we need to do that both in our school day and our out of school time programs. Like, that's the heart of what out of school time is. Every one of you that leads out of school time programming is really focused on how do you get kids moving and doing and acting. And I think that's what we need more of in our day-to-day classroom settings.
So Travis,
Yeah, and Shawn,
to chime in, yeah.
Michelle, I love everything you said. Totally agree. And the way I interpret what you just said, Michelle, is I want to play. I want to go play. I want to do things, right? It's like, here's the thing. Social and emotional development is happening, whether we like it or not, on the playground, at recess, at the cafeteria, for better or worse, right? It might be going in the wrong direction. So the idea is, how can we create opportunities and situations with a structured class environment that gives ample opportunity, right? In playing a game of, oh my gosh, I could steal food from my neighboring team as part of this game, or I could give them food. Well, why am I going to do that? And let's talk through that as an actual application of it. So, when we think about this, when I think about it, I'm a parent. I have 4 kids myself. And I think about, how did I become a great parent? At least I think I'm a great parent, right? And is it through all the theoretical? Did I read all the books? Did I go to all the classes? And is that what made it figure out? No. What made it figure out is when the hospital gave me my first child and said, you're responsible for this thing, even though you can't imagine why they would give you this responsibility. They do it anyway. And it's through the crying, blood, sweat, and tears of you, not the baby, that you learn by doing, through that failures in those moments, to become great at being a parent. And so that's what we're all about, is how do you create learning through play, through doing, and whatnot.
So I know a lot of folks on the line are like, okay, get to the good stuff, like get to the AI. But before I go that way, I'm going to pivot for a second, building on everything on your story, Travis, on your story, Michelle, and what you're talking about in regards to experiential learning, building in the character education, building in play, making sure that play is purposeful and intentional, but also free, and not always regimented. So I'm going to transition a little bit to a Quest game and ask you a question about it. So, as Travis was explaining with at least with Quest, and I know you have other products that we can see in your screens there behind you, but so you wake up, a student wakes up, and all the adults in the world are gone. And they got to start solving challenges and forming together. So they start doing things. How do we prevent, um, or do we prevent something like what happened in The Walking Dead? So like in The Walking Dead, you know, with the zombies and everything, there were all these groups, the Reapers and the Negans of the world, and all these evil people who popped up and were like, I'm going to take all your resources and I'm going to beat you down and you're going to have to abide by me. So when you have this open, free play society that you're role playing and you're playing a game, how do you, or how do we as instructors, or how do you accommodate for this in the game where kids don't go down a really dark path? Or do we let them explore? What's the
Yeah, I think it's not a totally open ended world in our game. It is still very structured and linear in how things happen. So there's a balance of that, right? Now, what's interesting about our game, and this is something we've gotten a lot of debates on as a company, in our game, so imagine a room where there's teams of 4 or 5 students, and they're all playing and competing against the other teams for survival in this post-apocalyptic world. I think it's important to note what the experience looks like. The teacher has like a video game experience up at the front of the class with over 2 hours of animated videos that immerse them in this world. And every year we launch a new season progressing the storyline. But I want to emphasize that the students are not sitting in front of a technology or a computer. They're playing as a collaborative team with physical, like board game and escape room type items as they are living in this TV show we've created for them and working through it. So I say that to say I think that we find blending technology is super important as part of the experience. Now, going to your question, here's an example of what on episode 1. As a team, you have these encounter scenarios that you have to make a choice, A, B, C, or D. What pathway do you pick? And some are bad. Some are evil choices within a healthy degree for education appropriateness. So in one of our episodes, you can choose. There's a boy that approaches your team and he is starving and he's asking you for food and he's also carrying a goose. Option A, you give him food. Option B, you lie and say you don't have food. Option C, you steal his goose. And so this is where it gets real though. There are potentially good and bad outcomes for all of those choices. And so when you steal the goose, you actually get resources in our game. There is some short-term gain. There's also some long-term costs because little do you know, you run into that same boy in episode 4 who's not too happy if you stole his goose at that time. But the reason we do this is that in our game, we have a rule. There is no right answer. There cannot be a definitively right answer. It always depends on what is the outcome. Are we trying to be good social society citizens? Are we trying to help others in the world? Or are we out for ourselves? Are we out to make sure we survive above all else? And based on those choices, let's talk through them and unpack them. We believe that we need to paint the picture, the world as it is, not as we wish it was, and to really prepare students for how they think through choices in life as a whole.
I love it. I'm just curious. Was that the whole goose scenario? Was that Michelle, did you have a hand in that? That's a fascinating scenario.
No, I did not. That's all Travis coming up with that scenario. And, you know, I think the thing I would add is just that students are incentivized to work together and be a team. I mean, they start to realize that working with each other, they can get more rewards and more incentives. And then even working with other teams, they figure out that if someone else has a certain blueprint or a certain part that they want, they can do some trading and be able to negotiate with other teams. So I've played Quest with probably 5 classes, Shawn, and I've never seen them kind of go rogue and all of a sudden go off the rails with the idea of the post-apocalyptic world. And, you know, the post-apocalyptic world is a very dystopian type story. Kids love that genre. And as Travis mentioned, it's 2 hours of content. That 2 hours is sprinkled across across the experience, and they're constantly wondering what's going to happen next in the story. What new tidbit of information are they getting to figure out what happened to all the adults? So that mystery is what's driving them more than trying to capitalize on the fact that the adults have vanished.
That is
Well,
so
and I just
cool.
have to share. So I don't know if you can make my screen pop up, but this is our reputation tracker in the game. And the reason I share it is because, as I mentioned about stealing the goose, every team in the classroom has a status, how others perceive them in the world of Quest. And so, based on the choices they make, they might become unfriendly or distrusted. Yes, they got food. They stole the goose, and they got food in the short term, but they start to become branded as a team that can't be trusted and is unfriendly to other teams. And there are long-term negative consequences to being on the low end. So we have this balance, right? Because our whole goal is to simulate real world.
Right.
It is true. In the short term, it may pay off to take that goose. In the long term, it's going to be really difficult, whereas you have huge benefits for becoming a trusted reputation team in that experience.
I think that's amazing. It's great that you keep it real and you keep it live. I love the fact, Michelle, that you've played it with 5 different groups, and that they haven't gone the Negan route of The Walking Dead, like the crazy, like gonna use my bat and bash your head type of group. I'm almost thinking that you might want to gift some of our leaders in the country a game so that we can play the game with them and they can learn from that, because that really gives us hope for society that the kids are making these amazing choices. What a beautiful thing. Have a couple of questions in the chat. One of the questions was, what if Negan did come around, Jennifer? You're absolutely right. It took a while though, like an entire season. But what if you are like rural Texas, or you're an area of inner city that just doesn't have a good infrastructure, or you don't have a lot of tech, you don't have a lot of Wi-Fi, you don't have really good, reliable infrastructure to do this? Is there a way that folks can still participate in the Quest product or in the other products that you have?
I'll start by first saying that, I'm not really here to sell and advocate the product.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's about, we just have a huge passion. We believe what we're doing. And so I say that to say, great classrooms have been doing this for decades before Wi-Fi, before technology. Great teachers have been excellent at building character and role modeling and doing all the things that we do in our game. So that's the first thing I'll start with, is that I don't think necessarily you have to have our game in order to accomplish very similar results of giving students what they need. Now, with that said, there is a little bit of a tech lift for our game. You have to have the physical product with you. You have to have a laptop per team. They use it to enter data and answers and clues and things like that. And you have to have a device for the teacher that can run the Unity file game as well. Wi-Fi is pretty imperative to that as well. There are aspects where we can work with a rural school to have downloaded versions of things, but typically that is a minimal lift. We tell people is you have to have 4 or 5 devices in the room and a Wi-Fi connection.
Perfect, thank you. Well, we have about 15 minutes before we have to turn it back over to Andrew, so I'm going to transition a little bit. Thank you though for going down that pathway, telling a little bit. For everybody on the line, I'm very thankful for Travis and Michelle, and I'm not trying to sell Quest or sell their product. I really love their product and fell in love with it years ago when Travis was doing kind of an escape the bus concept at various conferences and things like that. And I met him for the first time. But one of the things that drives me about the product and the focus, and the reason I've brought up a lot of information about it, although you could say that for anybody on the line, there are other groups on the line that do similar items. But I love the fact that it is based in technology. And with that, technology is growing faster and faster. My good friend Kathleen Bethke is on the line. She's the deputy director of the 21st Century Technical Assistance Center. And her and I were chatting the other day about just, the way artificial intelligence is starting to embed itself in every aspect of our life. Like, whether it be a personal assistant, it'd be on your phone, it'd be folks using a language model like ChatGPT to write their emails. I think, Travis, you were mentioning before we started the show that now there are language bots that can, read kind of messages and even possibly come up with responses. And so in the future, we may, how nice would it be that our emails are summarized for us and we only have to get the pertinent information, everything else is resolved, even though we may not know what was said, but we trust our AI bot. So with the advent of technology, and we mentioned this in the show at the last conference, what do you see the evolution of the informal learning space, like the space that you build products for? I mean, you build products for the entire education ecosystem, but what about this informal learning space? Do you see AI affecting us, the Yvonnes of the world and the Jennifers of the world and others that are on the line right now that are like, how do I deal with AI, and is it going to be banned like cell phones were when you were a kid, Travis? Or is it something that we're going to encourage kids to embrace? Are we going to try to trick kids? What are your general thoughts on that?
I'll turn it to Michelle first. I've got thoughts, but I'd love to hear from Michelle.
Well, now you threw me for a loop. I thought for sure you were going to take that and run with it. So I think that we're at a crossroads right now, and we could go one of two ways. We could go down this path of repeating what we did when Travis's iPod Touch was banned from school, and it's very likely that we could go down that path. And I think what keeps me up at night is using AI to reinforce poor pedagogy and leverage tools to generate better worksheets and we can generate faster quizzes and multiple choice tests. And so what I'm all about is trying to shift that to the other pathway, which is seizing the opportunity to reimagine learning. And by that, knowledge now, everything you need to know is at your fingertips. And this last week I was traveling and I used the app Perplexity. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've used that one, Shawn, but I would put in, I was in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Where's a great place that has gluten-free menus? And it would give me a list of restaurants. Now, I don't want to tell you about all the great food I had last week, but I could synthesize all these different websites and give me a summary of something really simple about what are the great restaurants, instead of having to go to each one and read. And I think that's just a really tangible example of how AI can synthesize all the knowledge that is out there and all the information that is out there and put it into one place for learners. And so no longer is the teacher kind of that disseminator of content or disseminator of knowledge. And I think our teachers are going through some identity crisis a little bit with that, as they start to think now the opportunity can be, I can be a facilitator and help kids access that information and apply that information and use that information. And so it allows them to design experiences that kids can actually build those real world skills. So I think there's two roads we could go down. The one that is not favorable, which is repeating our past and leveraging AI to cement poor pedagogy, or we can use this as an opportunity to really rethink the student experience. And that is the pathway that I, day in and day out, work both through ProSolve and the Human Intelligence Movement to help educators and out-of-school time program directors and providers to think differently about how might AI really allow us the freedom to really center students at the center and reimagine their day-to-day experience.
Yeah, I think I read your comment too, Jennifer. I could not agree more that is the path I see of identifying cheaters. I think that we have to realize in education that as new technologies come into existence, we have to constantly adapt our curriculum. That is the approach we should be having, right? I often said we have to ask questions that can't be Googled, because if all we do is ask Googleable questions, I should be replaced by Google. Now we can say the same thing about AI. The whole point of what Michelle and I have been advocating for is the pursuit of human intelligence. We need to stop training our kids to compete against artificial intelligence and technology. AI will always be better than me at writing a 5-paragraph essay. Therefore, the question should be, what the heck do we teach our kids? What do they need to know to be successful in society and in the future workforce? And I think, to go to your question, Shawn, that's the burning the thought of, how do we cope with this new era and what we see in education? And this is how I think of it. You know, for most of human history, the past, the career readiness looked like physical labor. Your physical ability to do something was imperative. We then made machines to do the physical labor for us, and it was chaos in the transition period as we devalued physical labor, and it ushered us into the knowledge era, an era where knowledge was the key to career readiness. If I could just get a 4-year college degree, I'm guaranteed success in the workforce. Just like we created machines to do the physical labor, we have now created machines to do the knowledge for us. And the reason we are all living in painful times right now is because we are in a transitionary period after hundreds of years of being in this knowledge era into something new, something different. And what I find interesting, you know, as you were sharing, Michelle, I thought about how the internet and Google ushered us in to an abundance of overwhelming amounts of knowledge and information. We had every piece of knowledge at our fingertips, almost too much, to where it became a problem. And now AI is the course correction of that. AI is now taking all that information, like Perplexity did, and synthesizing it into what I need most efficiently, most effectively in this moment now to solve a problem. And so I probably am more pessimistic about what education truly needs to be and become to stay relevant in a post-AI world. If you look at the current infrastructure of how we do education, it is all foundationally based on a knowledge era. Why do we have classrooms? Why do we break up people by age? That makes no sense. Why do we have subject-specific aspects? There's so many things about how we do school that I think we're going to quickly find is becoming more and more relevant in this future AI world. And we've got to start asking tough questions of, how do we completely reimagine and innovate education to the same degree it was innovated hundreds of years ago when the current system was initially founded and created.
So that's a big topic to unpack, and we don't necessarily have a lot of time, but I do want to ask a couple of questions and take this any direction it goes, and I'm sure we'll have additional conversations that can follow up on this. But if we look at you know, where AI is going and the transformation in education, and we focus on, you know, what you know, the positive aspect of it as well as the negative aspect of the future. In after school, in the informal learning space, which is where a lot of us work, we have a lot of freedom sometimes in after school. We can explore a little bit and push the envelope. We're also, some of the folks that work for us aren't necessarily fearful. Like, a lot of teachers are fearful of AI replacing them and doing things like that. But as we explore AI and the advent of technology and the various aspects in after school, understanding that sometimes, as Whitney's mentioning, sometimes the students that we're working with, you know, they go to school and they're kind of given that scope and sequence. They're given everything, you know, fed to them in a particular way. You know, this block builds on this block and this block, and we're using tech tools as kind of like a reinforcement structure. Like, we've just replaced paper quizzes with online quiz and games, you know, instead of experiential learning models. How do we in after school innovate and maybe kind of almost help guide education, since we have a little bit more freedom, but also, how do we not lose the the human piece, because I know we've mentioned the human intelligence movement a couple of times in today's chat, and I know you both are very passionate about, AI can't work alone. It needs kind of a human element to it. Otherwise, like you said, why would we do anything? We just ask Google, or we just turn our AI bots. We live like Wall-E. We live in these little chairs and walk around with these little robots doing everything for us. How do we innovate in after school? What can the folks on the line do to address Whitney's conversation, Jennifer's thoughts, and address what you're talking about? And Michelle or Travis, whoever wants to jump in, just you take this anyway, but we do have about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I just want to start by saying I have accidentally fell into the out of school space time and have fallen in love with it. We did not build Quest for after school or summer when we built it. There are 3 ways to build a product in business. You build a product, you build stuff you want to build, which is how most entrepreneurs start. You build what your current customers want, or you build what the future untapped markets want. Now, any great business advice will give you is they always say, build to the market. Go ask a bunch of buyers what they want and build to them. Well, the thing I noticed is when you ask what the market wants, often in education, they ask you, how are you going to improve standardized scores? How are you going to improve math? All these things. And so we built Quest out of our own mind. We built the things we wish we had as kids. Now, the reason I bring that up is that we didn't even know out of school time was a thing when we built it. We found a home because this is where innovation thrives in education. This is where you get to do what I hear this all the time. Well, we're going to do it because it's good for kids and we can do it in this out of school time. And I find it so funny. I was meeting with a superintendent last month. And, he just watched our Quest product and he was like, man, this is so great. We're going to do this in all of our summer and after school programs. And you know why we're going to do it? We're going to do it because it's great for kids. That's why we're going to do it. And I joked to him. I said, oh, okay. If it's so great for kids, do you want to just put it in your school day so all students can experience it? And he laughed. He said, are you kidding me? I could never put this in the school day. What? And right there, that was how I knew this kind of thinking and transformation will not happen in the school day. The school day is so parameters, limited, red tape. Every minute is carved out. We've got the curriculum that is so built on a knowledge-based era that our whole philosophy as a company is to innovate and try new ways of doing things in out of school to prove and validate that this is what school could and should look like across the country.
Michelle, I know you're going to add on to that because I know I'm sitting there like, yes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think you both talked about that freedom in the out of school time space to do things differently, to provide experiences that are different. And, our out of school time programs they are designed to serve our underserved students. And so really having that opportunity to have experiences that are authentic and relevant to kids is what out of school time programming is all about. Now, Travis, we are going to prove this in the out of school time market, like you said, and then we are going to change the school day experience with Quest and experiential learning. I really believe that should be true. But I think, one of the things you asked, Shawn, is what can people be doing now? And I think the best thing that I would recommend is really taking something that is tried and true, something that is worked really well in out of school time programming and doing something we call leveling it up. So what is a way that you can just augment it a little bit? And one of the things you've heard us talk a lot about Quest as an immersive experience, solving real world or simulated problems with a lot of storytelling, with a lot of gamification. And so even just taking an experience that you've always used and trying to add that immersive element to it. We have something called the learning experienced model that has an AI tool paired with it that helps educators really think about how can I level up lessons and bring more experiential learning into it? I think another way, and something I see all the time in out of school time programs, is those authentic experiences, whether it's field trips, whether you have speakers come in, whether you do a virtual field trip, and how do you level that up? Maybe you start with the day before the field trip, asking kids, what are all of the questions you have? What are you wanting to discover? What do you want to explore? And really making them kind of be the center of that experience and priming their thinking before they go on the field trip. And then they're looking for the answers and seeking the answers that they are curious about. And then on the backside, really making sure you take time to reflect on what did they see, what did they learn, and why does it matter? Like, that's one of the things I think that's missing so often when it comes to learning, is helping kids think about their thinking and make connections to why it matters to their day-to-day lives and their future. And so just even those leveling up, taking your existing programming and enhancing it just a little bit and gradually making those improvements, bringing that experiential learning into the folds. But I think, in out of school time programming, I think we'd all agree has really solid programming, really sound pedagogy behind it. And so I think that leveling up just enhances it even more for kids.
So I do have to bring us to a close, but I am going to give each of you maybe 20 seconds to give kind of a sound bite or a final thought, just something that our audience can leave and be like, okay, this is my takeaway. If there was one thing you want the audience to take away and remember from today, what would that be? I'll start with Travis, I'll end with Michelle, and then if it's okay, I'll close this out before I turn the time over to Andrew.
Yeah, I would just say, let's not repeat history and go the route of, one-to-one, that is the end outcome. Something I want to encourage anyone and everyone in education is that as AI is going to change our world in ways I don't think any of us are prepared for, there are two camps you're going to have in schools: people who are against AI, people who are for AI. So if you try to rally behind, let's put AI everywhere, you will fight resistance every step of the way. But if you can create a rallying cry around, let's pursue the development of human intelligence and build humans who can think for themselves, make decisions, have the social emotional skills to be successful, then that is a rallying cry that both camps can get behind. If I'm for AI, I'm like, absolutely, AI is going to do all the other stuff. We got to build that. If I'm anti-AI, I'll be like, yes, bring on the human element to everything. So let's rally behind the pursuit of human intelligence, which is truly changing the end game, as opposed to advocating for the tools that will help us get there.
All right. Thank you. Michelle.
Shawn, he stole everything I was going to say.
That's why I went first.
I know. I think for me, it's really don't be afraid of AI. Really think about how can I use AI to help help me to design learning, to write emails, to be efficient, to find those gluten-free restaurants, and use it in your day-to-day work. And then that way you start to be comfortable with it and see the synergy in how it can support you to build human-centered learning experiences. And I would just echo everything Travis said about building, being focused on building human intelligence. And we do that through leveraging AI. We're not going to run from it. We have to embrace it. And actually, there's a lot of freedom that is going to come from it. And as an educator, there's opportunity here and to do things differently. And I think about whether you are an out-of-school time provider or a classroom teacher, the freedom to become a facilitator of learning and really do things differently for kids is exciting to me. And so I would leave educators with that inspiration.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I'm at time. A big thank you to Travis and Michelle for all of your, for your stories, for your advice, for the work you do every single day in moving the bar on education. It is really appreciated. For everybody on the line, I know I got to turn it over to Andrew. He's put the survey in the links in the chat. There it is again, so that you can go ahead and give us some feedback. But I will just close out by saying that don't forget, Michelle and Travis will both be at Beyond School Hours 2025, which is going to be an absolute amazing experience. We will do the Perspective Show live. From there, we have our ongoing Foundation Series webinars, including Perspectives, which will be embedded. So I encourage you to join there. We're going to learn a lot more about AI. We're going to learn a lot more about technology. And Tonda, who's on the line, don't worry, we're also going to tie it into family engagement and how families can participate. So more coming there. But Andrew, I'm going to turn it back to you to close us out today.
Thank you so much, Shawn, Travis, and Michelle, for the wealth of knowledge and information you've shared. But thanks to everyone for coming and for enriching the webinar this afternoon. Please, as Shawn said, take a moment to complete the brief survey about the session so we can, continue to improve what we offer. We have other BSH webinars beyond the conference webinars coming up, but also giving a sneak peek. That's sometime in August and September. We'll be back with the Perspective Show with Shawn and some other guests as well. Exciting times, right? So give us your feedback so we can improve generally the webinar series that we provide, but also specifically what we offer with the perspectives from the field show AI edition. Just to let you know, a certificate of attendance will be sent within a week of to all those who attended the webinar live. Please stay tuned to our social media channels for more information about upcoming webinars. Thank you again for joining us, and do have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.